My daughter falsely accused me and had me in cuffs. But now that I am free man, and now she will be facing every consequence I had to live through. I don't even know where to start with this mess. Just thinking about it makes my blood boil. Writing this out is supposed to be therapeutic or whatever, but honestly, it just makes me relive everything all over again. Still, I need to get it out somewhere, and you guys on Reddit seem like the right audience for this kind of chaos. So here goes nothing. My daughter. Let's call her Kelsey. She's been nothing but trouble for years now. I'm talking years of constant drama, manipulation, and straight up chaos. I don't know if it's something we did wrong raising her, if we were too soft on her early on, or if she just came out of the womb wired for destruction. Either way, it feels like she was put on this earth specifically to test every single ounce of patience I had in me. And she succeeded. She broke me down piece by piece until there was nothing left. She's selfish, ungrateful, never takes responsibility for a single thing she does wrong, always has an excuse, always has someone else to blame, always plays the victim. It wasn't always this bad, though. When she was little, Kelsey was actually sweet. A bit stubborn, sure, but I figured that was just normal kid stuff. You know how it is. Every kid pushes boundaries a little bit. Every kid tests their parents to see what they can get away with. I thought we'd work through it, like every other family does. Then middle school happened, and everything went completely sideways. It was like someone flipped a switch in her brain. One day she was our little girl. The next day she was this entirely different person. She started acting like the world owed her something, like she was entitled to whatever she wanted whenever she wanted it. We were all just background characters in her personal drama, there to serve her needs and cater to her whims. She'd throw tantrums over the smallest, most ridiculous things you could imagine. Didn't get the exact birthday present she wanted? Door slammed so hard I thought the hinges would snap off. Asked her to do something simple like the dishes or take out the trash? Full-blown screaming match that would last for an hour. Got a B plus instead of an A on some assignment? 3-day silent treatment where she'd act like we'd personally betrayed her? It was absolutely exhausting trying to navigate her mood swings and dramatics. The worst part was watching her interact with other people. She had this way of manipulating everyone around her. She'd be sweet as pie to her friends' parents, all polite smiles and thank yous. Then the second we got home, it was back to the entitled nightmare version. She knew exactly what she was doing, playing different roles depending on who could give her what she wanted. Teachers would tell us what a delight she was in class. Neighbors would comment on what a nice young lady we were raising. Meanwhile, at home, she was tearing our family apart piece by piece. My wife and I started arguing more because we couldn't agree on how to handle her. I wanted to be firm, set boundaries, make her face consequences. My wife wanted to be understanding, give her space, let her work through whatever she was dealing with. Looking back, I think that's where we went wrong. We weren't a united front, and Kelsey picked up on that immediately. She learned how to play us against each other. Go to mom when dad says no. Tell dad that mom already agreed to something when she hadn't. Divide and conquer. That was her strategy, and it worked. My wife kept insisting it was just a phase. You know how teenagers are, she'd tell me. It's the hormones, the peer pressure. She's trying to figure out who she is. She'll grow out of it. Just be patient. Give her time to mature. Spoiler alert, she didn't grow out of it. She got worse. By the time Kelsey hit her actual teenage years, 13 through 16, it was like she made it her life's mission to make our lives absolutely miserable. The lying became constant, pathological even. She lied about everything. And I mean everything. Where she was going, who she was hanging out with, what she was doing, whether she'd finished her homework, if she'd eaten dinner. Big lies, small lies, meaningless lies. If her lips were moving, chances were about 99% that she was feeding us a load of complete garbage. She skipped school so much that the principal stopped just calling. He started requiring in-person meetings. We'd sit in his office while he laid out attendance records showing Kelsey had missed 30, 40, 50 days. We're talking about a kid who was barely showing up enough to even qualify as enrolled. And every single time, Kelsey would sit there with this bored expression on her face like none of it mattered. Like the principal, her teachers, her parents, we were all just wasting her precious time. I tried everything with her. I really did. I tried the gentle approach first, sitting down for heart-to-heart conversations about her future, about how education mattered, about how these choices now would affect her for years to come. That got me nowhere. She'd just stare at her phone the whole time, barely acknowledging I was even talking. So then I tried being firmer, setting clear rules and consequences. You skip school, you lose your phone for a week. You come home after curfew, you're grounded for a month, standard parent stuff. But enforcing any of it was impossible, because my wife would cave every single time. Kelsey would cry or yell or give my wife the silent treatment. And within a day or two, all the consequences would disappear. Phone back, grounding over, everything forgiven. I told my wife we needed to be consistent. That Kelsey was learning she could just manipulate her way out of everything. But my wife couldn't stand seeing Kelsey upset, even when Kelsey absolutely deserved to be upset. So nothing ever stuck. No consequence ever lasted long enough to actually mean anything. The school thing got so bad that eventually the principal straight up told us that if her attendance didn't improve drastically, they'd have to report us to social services for educational neglect. That's how bad it had gotten. But even that threat didn't faze Kelsey. If anything, she seemed almost proud of herself for pushing things that far. I tried the reasoning approach, sat her down and said, look, you need to get your high school diploma or at minimum your GED. Without that, your options in life are going to be incredibly limited. You want to work minimum wage jobs forever? You want to struggle financially your whole life? She just looked at me with this smug little smile and said, whatever, Dad, I'll figure it out. That was her answer to everything. Whatever, I'll figure it out. Like she had some master plan that we were all too stupid to understand. At 16 years old, she dropped out of high school completely. Just like that. Didn't even finish sophomore year. She came home one random Tuesday afternoon and announced she was done. School is stupid, she said, tossing her backpack in the corner like she was throwing away trash. I don't need it anyway. I'm leaving. My wife started crying immediately. I remember that moment so clearly. She just crumpled. Started begging Kelsey to reconsider, to please just think about what she was doing, to understand how much this would limit her future. I tried a different approach. Tried laying out the cold, hard facts. You know what jobs you can get without even a high school diploma? I asked her. Basically nothing. You'll be competing for the absolute bottom-tier positions with zero room for advancement. Is that really what you want for yourself? She just shrugged. There are plenty of successful people who dropped out of high school, she said, like she was some kind of misunderstood genius instead of a 16-year-old making the worst possible decision. We tried everything we could think of in the next few days. We offered to let her transfer to a different school if she didn't like her current one. We offered to homeschool her if that would work better. We even offered to let her take online classes at her own pace. We were grasping at straws, throwing out anything that might convince her to not completely derail her entire future. Nothing worked. She'd already made up her mind, and nothing we said was going to change it. Then she told us about the guy, this boyfriend she'd been seeing, that we knew absolutely nothing about some 21-year-old she'd met somewhere who told her she could come live with him, that she didn't need school or her parents or any of the things normal teenagers needed. He had it all figured out, apparently. Had this whole setup where she could just move in and everything would be perfect. I asked her what this guy did for work. She couldn't answer. Didn't know. Didn't care. I asked where he lived. Some apartment with roommates. I asked how he was planning to support both of them. She got defensive, said it wasn't any of my business, that I was trying to control her life, that I didn't understand anything about real relationships. Real relationships. At 16. With a 21-year-old man who was clearly taking advantage of her. But try telling a teenager that. Try explaining to someone that young that the person they think loves them is actually using them. It doesn't work. They don't want to hear it. The guy was a complete loser, by the way. No job, no prospects, no ambition beyond sitting around his apartment all day doing who knows what. I only met him once when he came to pick up Kelsey. Showed up in a beat-up car that was more rust than paint, wearing clothes that looked like he'd slept in them for a week. He wouldn't even look me in the eye when I tried talking to him. Just stood there nodding while Kelsey grabbed her stuff. I'll never forget the day she left. She packed up her things into 2 trash bags and a duffel bag. That was the sum total of what she was taking with her from 16 years of life in our house. Some clothes, her phone charger, a few random items. Didn't even take most of the stuff we'd bought her over the years. Just left it all behind like it meant nothing. My wife was sobbing. Literally sobbing. Begging Kelsey not to do this. Please stay, she kept saying. We can work through whatever's going on. We love you. We just want what's best for you. Kelsey didn't even look back. Just walked out the door, threw her bags in the back of that rust bucket car, and drove away. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't hug her mother. Didn't acknowledge us at all. Just gone. That was it. Our daughter, who we'd raised for 16 years, who we'd loved and supported and tried our absolute best with, just walked out of our lives like we were nothing. Like all those years meant absolutely nothing to her. For 3 years after that, we didn't hear a single word from her. Not one call, not one text, not one message on social media to let us know she was even alive. Complete radio silence. My wife was absolutely heartbroken. She'd cry herself to sleep, wondering if Kelsey was okay, if she was safe, if she had enough to eat, if she was being treated well. She'd drive past places where teenagers hung out, hoping maybe she'd catch a glimpse of Kelsey. Would check her phone 100 times a day, hoping maybe today would be the day she'd reach out. Me? I was angry at first, furious that after everything we'd done, after all the chances we'd given her, this was how she repaid us, just abandoning us without a word. But honestly, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't also a little bit relieved. Without Kelsey around, the house was quiet for the first time in years, peaceful even. No constant drama, no daily fighting, no walking on eggshells, wondering what mood she'd be in. We could just exist without all that chaos. Part of me thought maybe this was actually for the best. Maybe she needed to go out into the real world and learn some hard lessons about how things actually work. Maybe after struggling for a while, she'd mature a little, appreciate what she'd had, come back ready to actually be part of the family. Instead of treating us like servants, I was wrong about that. So very wrong. Then one night, 3 years later, she showed up on our doorstep out of nowhere. It was pouring rain, one of those heavy storms where you can barely see 2 feet in front of you. I was getting ready for bed when I heard this weak knocking on the front door. Not the usual confident knock of someone who belongs. This was hesitant, almost apologetic. When I opened the door, there she was, Kelsey, standing there completely soaked to the bone, mascara running down her face, holding a single trash bag full of what I assumed were her clothes. She looked terrible, thin, pale, like she'd been through something rough. "I have nowhere else to go," she said. Her voice was quiet, small, nothing like the confident, cocky teenager who'd walked out 3 years earlier. My first instinct, I'm being completely honest here, was to slam the door right in her face, to tell her she made her choice when she left, and now she needed to live with it. She wanted to be an adult so badly? Well, here's what being an adult actually looks like. You don't get to run home to mommy and daddy every time life gets hard. But before I could even get the words out, my wife rushed past me. She'd heard Kelsey's voice and came running from the kitchen. She pulled Kelsey inside before I could say anything, hugging her like she'd just come back from war overseas, even though Kelsey hadn't bothered to contact us even once in 3 whole years. Not one call on Mother's Day or Father's Day or Christmas or birthdays or anything. "She's our daughter," my wife kept saying, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "We can't just leave her out there in the rain. She needs us." I wanted to argue, wanted to point out that Kelsey was the one who chose to leave, that she was the one who cut off contact, that showing up after 3 years of silence didn't mean we owed her anything. But my wife was already leading her upstairs to her old room, already getting her dry clothes and towels, already slipping back into mom mode. Like no time had passed at all, I let her stay. But even in that moment, I knew it was a mistake. Knew it in my gut. And boy, was I absolutely right about that. At first, I genuinely tried to give her the benefit of the doubt I'm not completely heartless, despite how this story probably makes me sound. She was still my daughter, technically, and I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd changed. Maybe those 3 years out in the real world had taught her something. Maybe she'd finally learned some responsibility, some appreciation for what she'd had. Maybe she'd come back ready to actually contribute and be a productive member of the family, instead of the nightmare she'd been before. Nope, not even remotely close. Within just a few days, she was back to her exact same old ways. It was like she'd never left, like those 3 years hadn't happened at all. She didn't look for a job, didn't help around the house, didn't offer to contribute a single cent toward groceries or bills or rent, didn't do a single productive thing except sit on the couch, scrolling through her phone literally all day long. I'm talking about waking up at noon, shuffling downstairs in pajamas, planting herself on the couch, and then sitting there until midnight, watching videos and texting people. That was her entire daily routine. Every single day. We'd ask her to do something simple, basic household stuff that anyone living in a house should help with. Take out the trash when it's full, load the dishwasher after dinner, throw a load of laundry in, wipe down the kitchen counters, sweep the floor. Literally anything to show she appreciated having a roof over her head and food to eat. And every single time, she'd roll her eyes like we were asking her to climb Mount Everest blindfolded. "Why can't you just do it?" she'd say, not even looking up from her phone. "I'm tired." Tired from what exactly? Sitting on her rear end all day doing absolutely nothing productive? My wife kept making excuses for her, just like she'd always done. "Oh, she's been through a lot," she'd tell me when I'd complain. "She needs time to adjust to being back home. She's probably dealing with some trauma from whatever happened out there. We need to be patient with her." patient with her. After she left us hanging for 3 years without a word, after she walked out on us like we meant nothing. We were supposed to be patient while she sat around doing nothing all day, acting like she was on vacation. And then there were the late nights, the mysterious disappearances that started happening after about a week of her being back. She'd leave the house after we'd finished dinner, somewhere around 8 or 9 at night, saying she was going out for a walk or meeting up with a friend from back in the day. But she'd be gone for hours and hours. Sometimes she wouldn't come home until 1 or 2 in the morning, sometimes even later. When I'd ask her where she'd been, what she'd been doing, who she was with, she'd just shrug and say somewhere or nowhere or with people. Like it was none of my business what she was doing while living under my roof, eating my food, using my electricity. The worst part was how she'd come back. She'd walk in at 2 in the morning smiling like she didn't have a care in the world, still riding whatever high she'd gotten from wherever she'd been. She'd flop down on the couch, pull out her phone, and start scrolling and texting like it was the middle of the afternoon. Wouldn't even acknowledge that coming home at 2 in the morning might be a problem. I tried talking to my wife about it again. Tried explaining that this wasn't normal behavior, that we needed to set some rules and boundaries, that we couldn't just let Kelsey treat our house like a hotel where she could come and go as she pleased with zero accountability. But my wife kept deflecting. She's 19 now, she'd say. She's an adult. We can't control every aspect of her life. That wasn't the point. The point wasn't about controlling her life. The point was that if she was going to live in our house, she needed to show basic respect, basic consideration. She needed to contribute something instead of treating us like a free hostel that existed only to serve her needs. This went on for weeks. Kelsey doing absolutely nothing productive during the day, disappearing all night, coming home at ridiculous hours, refusing to help with anything around the house. I could feel my blood pressure rising every single day. Could feel the anger and frustration building up inside me like pressure in a shaken can. One night, I finally hit my absolute limit. Kelsey had been out until almost 2 in the morning, and when she finally strolled in like nothing was wrong, I was waiting for her in the living room. "Where have you been?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm even though I was seething inside. She didn't even look at me, just kicked off her shoes and headed toward the stairs. "Out," she said. "Out where? Doing what? With who?" She finally turned around and looked at me with this smug little smile on her face. "Why do you even care?" she asked. Like my concern for her safety and well-being while she lived in my house was somehow unreasonable. That's when I finally told her exactly what I'd been thinking for weeks. I told her that she needed to start pulling her weight around here or find somewhere else to live. That I was done with her treating our house like a crash pad. Done with her acting like we owed her room and board, just because she happened to be born to us. Done with all of it. Her response? "You're supposed to take care of me. That's what parents do." That's literally what she said. Like raising her for 16 years and then taking her back in after she abandoned us wasn't enough. Like we had some lifelong obligation to house and feed her no matter how she treated us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything she'd done, dropping out of school, running away, ignoring us for 3 years, coming back and freeloading, treating us like servants. After all of that, she still somehow believed we owed her something. That was the exact moment I decided I'd had absolutely enough. I gave her an ultimatum. 24 hours to pack her things and leave. My wife tried to argue with me, but I shut her down. "She's an adult," I said. "She made her choices. It's time for her to deal with the consequences." At first, Kelsey didn't take me seriously. She laughed and said, "Yeah, okay, Dad," like it was some kind of joke. But when she realized I wasn't kidding, her attitude changed. She started yelling, screaming that I was a terrible father, that I didn't love her. I stood my ground. Told her she had until tomorrow night. She stormed off to her room and slammed the door so hard the whole house shook. My wife gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day, but I didn't care. I was done. It happened before the 24 hours were even up. I was in the living room, sitting on the couch, scrolling through the news on my phone, trying to decompress after yet another argument with my wife about enabling Kelsey. My patience was already worn paper thin, but I figured I just had to hold out until tomorrow night. Then Kelsey would be gone for good and I could finally have my home back. But life has a funny way of kicking you when you're already down. There was a loud knock at the door. 3 quick, sharp bangs that made my heart jump. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was the kind of knock that meant trouble. I got up to answer it, my stomach already twisting into knots. When I opened the door, there were 3 police officers standing there, all of them looking dead serious. "Sir, we have a warrant to search your property," one of them said. My mind went completely blank for a second. What? Why? "We received an anonymous tip about illegal substances being stored in this house," the officer explained. The report was filed under your name. My house. I felt like the ground had just been ripped out from under me, I wanted to argue, to slam the door in their faces. But I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. So I stepped aside and let them in, feeling this heavy sense of dread settle over me. They spread out quickly. One officer stayed in the living room while the others began searching the house. My wife stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale as a ghost. Kelsey, on the other hand, sat on the couch completely unfazed. She even had the nerve to smirk at me as the officers went upstairs to check the bedrooms. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew this was her doing. Who else could it be? She'd been sneaking around, staying out late, hanging with who knows what kind of people. She was the only one who had anything to gain from this chaos. The officers searched her room first. I stood in the hallway watching as they tore through her things, flipping through her drawers, pulling the sheets off her bed, emptying out her backpack. But they didn't find anything, not a single thing. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was all just a misunderstanding, some kind of mix-up. Then they went into my room. I wasn't even worried at first. I knew there was nothing in there. I had nothing to hide. I watched as they pulled open my dresser drawers, went through my closet, checked under the bed, and then one of them opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. He froze, reached inside, and pulled out a plastic bag filled with white powder. "What the hell?" I said out loud. The officer looked at me, then at the bag, then back at me. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us." I stood there in complete shock. "That's not mine," I said. "I don't know where that came from. I've never seen that before in my life." They didn't care. Within minutes, I was in handcuffs being led out of my own house. My wife was crying. Kelsey was still sitting on the couch, watching the whole thing go down with this blank expression on her face. That's when it hit me. She did this. She planted that bag in my room. She called the cops on me. I spent the next 5 months in jail waiting for my trial. 5 whole months. Let me tell you, if you've never been locked up for something you didn't do, you can't even begin to imagine what that's like. It's not just the physical confinement, though that's bad enough. It's the mental torture of sitting in a cell day after day, knowing you're innocent, but being completely powerless to prove it. The first night was the worst. They processed me. Took my mugshot, fingerprints, the whole degrading routine. Then they put me in a cell with 3 other guys. The smell alone was enough to make you want to pass out: sweat, body odor, industrial cleaning solution, and something else I couldn't quite identify but definitely didn't want to. The bunk they gave me had a mattress that was maybe 2 inches thick, and I'm being generous there. Sleeping on concrete would have probably been more comfortable. I barely slept that first week, couldn't shut my brain off, kept replaying everything in my mind. The look on Kelsey's face when the cops were searching, that little smirk she couldn't quite hide, the bag in my drawer, the handcuffs, the neighbors watching as I was led out of my own house like some kind of criminal. Do you know what it's like to lose everything in a single moment? Your freedom, your reputation, your dignity, your sense of safety in the world. All of it gone in an instant because someone decided to destroy your life. The other inmates could tell I didn't belong there. I wasn't some hardened criminal. I was just a regular guy who'd worked regular jobs and paid regular taxes and tried to be a decent father. But in jail, that doesn't matter. You're all the same once those doors close behind you. All just inmates wearing the same clothes, eating the same terrible food, counting down the days until maybe, hopefully, you get to leave. My bail was set at $75,000. $75,000 for a first-time offender with no criminal history. But the charges were serious possession with intent to distribute. They were treating me like some kind of major dealer, like I was running some operation instead of being a guy who'd been framed by his own daughter. My wife tried to scrape together the bail money, emptied our savings account, asked her sister for a loan, even looked into taking out a second mortgage on the house. But it wasn't enough. We didn't have that kind of cash just sitting around. We were regular middle-class people living paycheck to paycheck like most Americans. 75,000 might as well have been 75 million. So I sat in that cell, day after day, week after week, month after month. The worst part, and I mean the absolute worst part of all of this, was that my wife doubted me. I could see it in her eyes when she came to visit. She didn't say it outright, didn't actually accuse me of anything, but I knew. I could read it all over her face. She was wondering if maybe she didn't know me as well as she thought, if maybe I'd been hiding something from her, if maybe there was a whole side of me she'd never seen. You know your own spouse. You know their expressions, their body language, the way they look at you when they believe you versus when they're questioning you. And my wife was questioning me. Her own husband. the man she'd been married to for over 20 years. She was sitting there across from me in that visitation room, wondering if I was actually guilty. That hurt worse than anything else. Worse than the arrest. Worse than the jail cell. Worse than the humiliation of being paraded out of my house in handcuffs while my neighbors watched. My own wife didn't believe me when I told her I was innocent. I tried to explain it to her. Tried to tell her that Kelsey had obviously planted that bag in my drawer, that she'd called in the tip to get back at me for kicking her out. But my wife just looked at me with these sad, confused eyes and said she didn't know what to believe anymore. "You don't know what to believe?" I remember saying. "I'm your husband. You've known me for 2 decades. I'm telling you I didn't do this. That should be enough." But it wasn't. The doubt was already there, already poisoning everything between us, and I could see in that moment that even if I got out, even if I was cleared of all charges, our marriage would never be the same. The trust was broken. The foundation was cracked, and I wasn't sure it could ever be fixed. Meanwhile, Kelsey was living it up back at the house. My wife told me she seemed almost cheerful, going out every night, coming back late, acting like she didn't have a care in the world, like she hadn't just destroyed her father's entire life, like putting me in jail was just some minor inconvenience instead of the devastating, life-altering catastrophe it actually was. I'd lie awake at night on that concrete thin mattress, thinking about her, wondering how someone I'd raised could be so cold, so calculating, so utterly devoid of conscience or empathy. I kept trying to pinpoint where it all went wrong. Was it something we did? Something we didn't do? Some crucial moment where we made the wrong choice and sent her down this path? But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't about us. Some people are just broken in a way that can't be fixed. Some people only care about themselves, no matter how they were raised or what opportunities they were given. And Kelsey was one of those people. She'd always been selfish, always been manipulative. I'd just been too busy hoping she'd grow out of it to see the truth she wasn't going to change. This was who she was, and she was perfectly fine with it. The days blurred together after a while. Same routine every day. Wake up, eat terrible breakfast, sit in the common area, eat terrible lunch, sit some more, eat terrible dinner, try to sleep. Repeat, over and over and over. The only thing that kept me going was anger. Pure, burning anger at what Kelsey had done to me, at the injustice of sitting in a cell for something I didn't do, at my wife for doubting me, at the legal system for moving so slowly, at everything. That anger was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. But then, finally, things started to shift. The police started digging deeper into the case. They questioned Kelsey multiple times. At first, she played it perfectly, the shocked, heartbroken daughter who couldn't believe her father would do such a thing. But the investigators weren't buying it. They pulled her phone records, checked her social media, looked into her recent activities and associations. Turns out Kelsey had been hanging out with some seriously shady people, known dealers in the area, people who'd been on the police radar for months, and her story started falling apart under scrutiny. They brought her in for questioning again. This time, they pressed harder, told her they knew she'd been involved with these people, that her fingerprints were all over this. And that's when she started to crack. She didn't confess outright, but she slipped up, said things that didn't add up, contradicted herself multiple times. The investigators saw right through it. Then they did something that changed everything. They required her to take a mandatory drug test as part of the investigation. And when those results came back, positive. Not just for heroin, but for cocaine and amphetamines. That's when the whole picture became clear. Kelsey wasn't just some troubled kid. She was an addict. And more than that, she was dealing. She'd been using our house while she was out selling. And when I threatened to kick her out, she panicked and planted evidence on me. It was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing. The charges against me were dropped. I was released after 5 months in that cell. But the damage was done. My reputation was destroyed. People in the neighborhood whispered when I walked by. Some still weren't sure if I was actually innocent. The arrest had made the local news. My mugshot was out there. I lost my job. They'd let me go 2 months into my incarceration. Even after I was cleared, they wouldn't take me back. Said it was about optics. My life was in shambles, all because of her. Kelsey, meanwhile, was facing her own consequences. She was charged with possession, intent to distribute, and filing a false report. The evidence against her was overwhelming. Her phone records, the people she'd been associating with, her own positive test results. There was no way out for her this time. The trial dragged on for months. Her lawyer tried every angle he could think of, argued that she was just a victim of addiction, that she wasn't in her right mind when she reported me to the police, that she deserved leniency because of her age and her circumstances. I sat in that courtroom every single day. I needed to see her face, needed her to know that I wasn't going to let her get away with this without seeing the damage she caused. At one point, her lawyer tried to paint her as this poor, misguided girl who'd fallen in with the wrong crowd, who'd made mistakes because she was desperate and struggling. I wanted to stand up and scream. She wasn't desperate. She was vindictive. She wasn't struggling. She was calculating. This wasn't about addiction. This was about revenge. But I kept my mouth shut. Let the evidence speak for itself. When the verdict finally came down, it felt more like a formality than a victory. Kelsey was found guilty on all charges: possession, intent to distribute, filing false accusations. The judge didn't hold back during sentencing either. Instead of prison, though, she was sentenced to 8 years in a long-term rehabilitation center. The judge believed that addressing her addiction was critical to making sure she didn't repeat her actions, that she needed treatment, not just punishment. Kelsey showed almost no emotion when the sentence was read. Just a slight shrug, like it didn't even matter. Like this was all just some minor inconvenience. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted to feel vindicated, but I didn't. The damage was already done. 8 years in rehab wasn't going to erase the 5 months I spent in jail. It wasn't going to fix my reputation or get me my job back. It wasn't going to undo the fact that my own daughter had tried to destroy my life. After the trial, I got a restraining order, made it official that she could never come near me again. Not now, not when she gets out, not ever. She made her choices, and I made mine. For a while, I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, haunted by everything that had happened, replaying it all in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done differently, some way I could have seen this coming. My wife, on the other hand, seemed stuck in the past. She started writing Kelsey letters, trying to keep some kind of relationship alive. At first, I didn't say anything, but eventually it became too much. "What are you hoping to accomplish?" I asked her one night when I caught her sealing another envelope. "She's our daughter," she said, for what felt like the millionth time. "She stopped being our daughter the day she put me in handcuffs," I replied. My voice was cold, sharp. "I don't care what she's going through. I don't care if she gets better. She's out of my life, and that's not changing." That conversation was the tipping point. We weren't on the same page anymore. We weren't even in the same book. My wife clung to the idea of Kelsey as the daughter we used to know, the little girl she'd raised, the baby she'd once held. But that version of Kelsey didn't exist anymore. Not to me, maybe not to anyone. It became clear pretty quickly that our marriage wasn't going to survive this. The trust between us was gone, eroded by months of doubt, anger, and pain. My wife had doubted me when I needed her most, and now she was trying to hold on to a relationship with the person who destroyed everything we'd built together. How could we come back from that? The answer was simple. We couldn't. One night, after another tense argument about Kelsey, I finally said it out loud. "I don't think we can keep doing this." My wife looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "You're saying you want to leave?" "I'm saying this isn't working," I said. My voice was steady, but heavy. "We're not the same people we were before all of this. I don't trust you. And you don't understand me anymore. I can't stay in this house surrounded by everything that reminds me of her." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I don't want this. But I understand." We agreed to separate. A few weeks later, the paperwork was filed. She kept the house. The one place I didn't want to be anymore, I moved into a small apartment across town. Far enough to feel like I was starting fresh, but close enough to handle the practicalities of dividing our lives. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.